Hey guys, it's Justine here from I Should Read That, and today I'm going to do my Yalc book haul. I had an amazing time at Yalc this year. This was my second year, and it was a completely different experience from my first year because my first year I went by myself. I hardly knew anyone. I didn't really know most of the books. I didn't know most of the authors, but this year I not only had friends there, I met a lot of new people. I knew most of the authors, and it was just a great experience altogether. I also picked up significantly fewer books than I did last year. I brought home 30 new books as opposed to like the 60 that I brought home last year, which is slightly ridiculous. But I went completely crazy last year. I just bought everything, and this year I made sure I only bought and entered to win stuff that I really wanted. So obviously I did a really good job. I did a great job. One of the big differences between this year and last year was that I actually brought a lot of my books with me. So I didn't need to like rebuy copies because I had this idea in my head that I wasn't going to be able to actually like get into any of the signing queues last year, so I didn't bring anything with me. So I ended up rebuying a couple of copies of books, and I didn't do that this year. I ended up bringing a lot of books. I didn't get all of them signed because people like Tomi Adeyemi had a crazy signing queue that I didn't end up getting into. But I did, I think, get 13 of my own books signed, and then I got some of my new books signed as well, which was really wonderful, and I had the best time meeting all of these authors, some of whom were new to me, some of which I haven't read before but I know a lot about, and some of which I read their books and really loved them and got to sort of tell them how much I liked their books. So it was just a great experience, but because I brought some books with me, I ended up not buying as much stuff as I did last year, which is fantastic. One of the things that they did this year that was a little bit different is that they didn't have these insane ARC drops. What they did instead was they raffled off copies, or they, gave 25 copies to the first people who showed up to the stand, or they, gave people a proof if they bought a book off of the stand. All of which I think is a much better system of doing things than they did last year, which was like the first person who runs to our stand and howls like a wolf gets a book, which like, no. So I ended up getting 6 proofs, which I'm very pleased with. I actually got more proofs this year than I did last year, so obviously the system is working. And then I ended up buying a lot of books, some of which were from the Waterstone stand, which meant they were full price, but a lot of them were from the publishers' stands, which were all discounted. So all in all, I didn't spend all that much money. I spent a lot of money. I didn't spend as much money as it looks like, so that's at least a good thing, but I think that my book buying is coming to an end for quite a while. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to show you the proofs that I picked up, then I'm going to show you the books that I ended up kind of getting day by day. So the very first proof that I got was my number 2 priority for the weekend, which is just amazing. The number 1 priority was to get a copy of Priory of the Orange Tree. They were raffling off 2 copies, and I didn't end up getting one, but I did end up getting Girls of Paper and Fire, and this is by Natasha Ngan. So this is another East Asian inspired fantasy, which is something that I'm very excited for. And this is about a society in which there is a sort of class system, and our main character is Lee, and Lee is a member of sort of the lower caste. She is a member of the paper caste, so she is very renowned for her beauty, and she has been noticed by the king, and she kind of gets swept away to become, I believe it's essentially a concubine for the king. She's one of 8 other women. Her mother was also snatched away 10 years ago in the exact same way, so now she has the chance to figure out what happened to her mother, and she also kind of has to go into this horrible, unwanted position. However, when she is in the palace, she ends up falling in love with one of the other girls who's kind of imprisoned there to become one of these concubines. I'm so excited to read this. First of all, it's a beautiful cover. I love this cover, and it sounds like a book that people have been really wanting for a long time, because while you get a lot of gay romances in YA, you don't get a lot of lesbian romances, and you especially don't get them in fantasy. So I'm especially excited to read this. I am very much looking forward to it. I think it comes out in the UK on the 6th of November. I'm not sure where it's out elsewhere, but this is going to be great. This is one I'm going to read very soon. Next, we have a book that I am also incredibly excited about. This would have been one of my top priorities if I knew it was going to be there. This was another one where you bought a copy off of the stand and you got a free galley, your choice, from the sort of ones that they supplied. I was tipped off by Nikki from Books and Lemon Squash. So thank you so much. I've been like thanking her the entire weekend for this because I picked this up on Friday. So this is Kingdom of the Blazing Phoenix, and this is by Julie C. Dow. This is the sequel to Forest of a Thousand Lanterns, which was one of my favorite books of this year. Like, I loved that book so much because you know me, you know I love a good villain, and that book is essentially a retelling of the evil queen myth. However, it is set in a kind of East Asian inspired world, and it is the evil empress, and she is beautiful and horrible and eats people's hearts and is fantastic, and I love her so much. This is the sequel to that book. This is about kind of her foil who's going to end up being the hero, so I'm a little bit nervous about that because I love Shifeng so much. But this is going to be amazing. I love her world building, I love her writing style, and I love her female characters, so I'm very much looking forward to this book. I like am beside myself with excitement to read this. So the next book I have is one that I actually won. I won it, and I'm so excited because I never win anything. And I was actually complaining about how I hadn't won anything on Saturday. So I ended up getting this on Sunday. The announcement that I had won it came out just as I was about to leave. So very, very good timing on their part. This is The Familiars, and this is by Stacey Halls. So this book sounds amazing, and I didn't know anything about it. I hadn't heard about it before the competition, but I looked into it when the tweet went out to potentially win this, because I didn't want to enter in for anything I didn't want. I read the description and like immediately knew I had to have it. So this is a historical fiction novel. It takes place in the 17th century during the witch trials, and it has witches and it has strong women, and it's just like, it's going to be so amazing. So this is based on real life events. It tells the story of Fleetwood Shuttleworth, who's the young mistress of Gawthorpe Hall, and her dangerous friendship with the midwife Alice Gray. This is going to be fantastic. I am so looking forward to this. It will come out in February of 2019. This is such a beautiful proof. I don't know what the actual cover is going to look like, but it's just lovely. This is going to be amazing. Can you tell I'm excited about this? The next one that I got is actually from the same stand that I got Kingdom of the Blazing Phoenix. This is one of the sort of last books that they had on their stand on Sunday when I was going around and buying discounted books. So I don't know anything about this, but it looked really, really interesting. So this is The Rosemary Spell, and this is by Virginia Zimmerman. So this book follows Rosemary and Adam. They agree on almost everything, and they love books. Books are the most important thing to them. So one day, Rosemary and Adam have found an old book, and it's not just an old book, it's an old book. That's what it says here. And it could have even belonged to Shakespeare. It's so ancient. So recently, it came into the possession of a elderly poet named Constance, and some of the ancient pages seem to have writing on them, but some of them do not. It's a very, very strange book, and it has a dark side. It's connected to memory, and when you lose memory, you send a person you love to the void. So Shelby, who is Adam's sister, vanishes, so they have to try to bring her back. This sounds great. This sounds exactly like something I would really like. For some reason, it's very much reminding me of Spellbook and the Lost and Found by Moira Fowley-Doyle, which I read last year and really loved. So I don't, again, know much about this. It does have a starred review from Publishers Weekly. I don't think that this is actually a galley now that I think of it, but it was published in 2015. So maybe these are some leftovers, I don't know, but this is something that will be available if you guys are interested. It sounds really, really cool. Next up is a book that I won in a Lucky Dip competition. If you don't know what that is, you basically reach in and you pull out something, and if you got the right thing, you get a prize. So in this case, it was little slips of paper with a crown on them if you won, and a sort of like very pretty branch and leaf if you did not. So oh my god, I tried to win this 3 or 4 times. I obviously got this on my last try, and I was so thrilled. This is Beneath the Citadel, and this is by Destiny Saria. So this book is about a city called Eldra, which is ruled by ancient prophecies, which is never a good thing. So this book takes place after an infallible prophecy came to pass, and growing unrest in the city led to murders and rebellion that raged for more than a decade. So in the present day, there's a girl named Cass, who's the orphan daughter of rebels, and she's determined to fight back against kind of the government of this city. So she's trying to sort of enact a new rebellion while also living with the legacy of her parents that they left behind, and they uncover the mystery of an infallible prophecy like the one that ravaged the city 10 years ago, and they are going to try to save the city and themselves. This sounds fantastic. This sounds really great. This will be out in October 2018. This is from Abrams Books. The last of the proofs that I picked up at Yalc is Damsel, and this is by Elena K. Arnold. She is a National Book Award finalist, which is very cool. So this sounds really interesting. This kind of takes on the fairy tale trope that is slightly uncomfortable and that I think is just sort of due for someone to poke holes in. So this is about a sort of world that has a particular right for the king in waiting, the person who's going to become king. So he must venture out into the Grey Lands, slay a fierce dragon, and rescue a damsel as his bride. This is just the way that things have always been. So our main character is Alma, and she wakes up in the arms of Prince Emery, and she has no memory of what's happened to her. She has no idea what's going on. She has no memory of being captured by the dragon and what horrors she faced in the dragon's lair. All she knows is the story that this young man tells her, and she has her, destiny of sitting on the throne beside him. So it sounds like something out of a fairy tale. However, she discovers that not all is as it seems. There's more to this kind of legend and this sort of destiny that she has. This sounds amazing. Again, it's kind of this deconstruction of the honestly kind of creepy sort of Snow White or the Sleeping Beauty-esque sort of prince coming to rescue a damsel in distress. I think that this is going to be amazing. So this, let's see here. Again, oh, this is an American one as well. So it says that this is out in October. So again, it might be different for the UK. I will go ahead and look into that date and put that down for you guys. This is going to be really good. Again, it's one that I didn't know about before, but I sort of looked it up, looked into it, and went ahead and got in the queue and was given a copy of this book. So Yalc runs from Friday to Sunday on the last weekend of July. However, Forbidden Planet in London decided to have like a pre-Yalc type signing event. So I ended up going to that and I had an amazing time, and that is actually where I met Jen and her boyfriend Jordan, who I spent a lot of time with at Yalc. I will link her, not only her blog, but her amazing shop down below. So as I was hanging out with them, I decided to pick up 3 books from this event. So the very first one is actually a recommendation from Jen herself. So this is The Loneliness of Distant Beings, and this is by Kate Ling. So this is one of those books that I've been sort of coming across a lot if you have seen my July book haul, if that video is up yet. This is a book that just doesn't have much of a description on the back, which I love. I like to discover these things on my own. So this says, "It is that quick, that strong, that beautiful, and is also totally impossible." This is a young adult science fiction book, and it has just beautiful covers. First of all, I don't know anything about this book, but I have heard amazing things about it. I think it's kind of a more underrated book series, and I know the 3rd one has just come out. So if I decide that I like this, I have some reading to do. So the next book that I picked up at this Forbidden Planet event is I Am Traitor. This is by an Icelandic author, and her name is, we talked about this, I'm probably going to butcher it, so I apologize, but we did chat about this. Her name is Siv Sigmarsdóttir. This is kind of described as like War of the Worlds, but for the YouTube and internet age. So it follows a girl named Amy Sullivan, and she lives in a high-rise tower block in the middle of London. So large metallic arms fall from the sky, and terrified victims are transported to an unimaginable world on the other side. So she is running until she can't run any longer. She is taken, finds herself on the inside of one of these spaceships, and she decides she's going to have to save her planet. This sounds fantastic. It's one that I've seen around a lot, but I don't think I've seen any reviews of. I don't think any of my sort of blogging and reviewing pals have read this. So I'm going in blind, but it sounds really fun. The author is lovely. She's fantastic. So this is going to be a really great book. Next up, we have one of the books that I was extremely excited to get, and I managed to get it on the first day, even before Yalc started. So this is Sweet Black Waves. This is by Christina Perez. I was lucky enough to talk to Christina Perez for a little while before actually buying this book and getting it signed, and she is a medievalist. She has her PhD, and she has published work on Morgan Le Fay. So she's like the expert in this field, and this book is a retelling, but it's a Tristan and Isolde retelling, which is just amazing. So this book is about a girl named Bronwyn. I'm probably saying these sort of old English names incorrectly, but this is about a girl named Bronwyn, and she's the best friend and lady in waiting to the princess. So she unknowingly saves the life of one of her enemies, these raiders who come and sort of destroyed her family. They killed her parents. So she accidentally saves his life with her ancient healing magic, and she falls in love. And as she's beginning to dream of peace, her princess friend is not so easily convinced, and sort of everything tumbles down from there. I believe this is going to be the first in a trilogy, and it's about warring countries, family secrets, and forbidden romance. I feel like I slightly butchered that, but this sounds amazing. This sounds like one that is going to just be so my perfect kind of book. Also, look at this map. It's so just like so perfect. This is everything that I love in the kind of retelling world. So the Friday of Yalc was my biggest book buying day. My rule for Yalc is I kind of like try to get everything that I really want to get done on the first day because it's definitely the calmest, and that's when all the publishers actually have stock of all these books and they have all of these prizes to be given away. So I always shop on the first day, get everything that I desperately want, and then on the last day, which is the Sunday, is the day that they kind of discount everything. I'll go through and pick up things that I'm interested in but not kind of desperate to have because they're probably not going to be there anymore. So all of these books I bought on the publisher's stand. So none of these were full price, which is great, and that's really especially nice because I got a lot of them. So there's a fair few hardbacks, which you don't see very often in the UK, but I love hardbacks, so I wanted to get the opportunity to actually pick those up, and I have a few paperbacks as well. So first things first, I have two books from, I believe, the Source book stand, and that's where I picked up Kingdom of Blazing Phoenix. I have Roar by Cora Carmack. This is kind of like a book that's about sort of almost Daenerys Targaryen looking girl who is a member of royalty, and her family controls the weather. There are these fierce storms that can threaten to destroy the world, but her family holds them back. However, she doesn't have any of this magic, and she has to marry a man who can kind of sort of solidify her place on the throne. And of course, she probably goes ahead and discovers that things are not all as they seem. This is one that I've heard very mixed things about, but I am very interested in, partially because it's got a lovely cover. Next I have a book that I'm so excited about. Another one that I wasn't expecting to see at Yalc, and I cannot tell you how excited I am for this. This is Persia Born, and this is by Zoraida Cordova. So she wrote a series called Labyrinth Lost, which I should have picked up at the stand at the same time because that was sold out by the time Sunday came around. But if I like this, then I'm absolutely going to pick up her other books as well. So this book, in short, is, I believe, about a family of witches who have Mexican heritage who live in Brooklyn. Sounds perfect to me, quite honestly. So next up are the two books that I picked up from the Hotterscape stand when I got Girls of Paper and Fire. So this first one is Spacemen of Bohemia. This is by Yaroslav Kalfar, and this is about, I believe there's nothing on the back. I've read about this book before, and I was really interested in it. I believe it's about an astronaut from the Czech Republic in the 1980s. That's all I know. I've heard great things. I swear I've looked into this book before. I just can't recall, but on the back it's all blurbs. So it's apparently wonderful, and it's apparently an incredible experience. This person from the Bailey's Women's Prize for Fiction has loved every single page. So I really am looking forward to this. It's one that I have been wanting to get my hands on for a really long time. Next we have The Suicide Club, and this is by Rachel Heng. So this book is about a sort of dystopian near future New York City in which medical technology has progressed to the point in which people do not die. However, that sort of immortality is only given to people who show themselves to be deserving of it. So our main character is Leah, and she is 100 years old, and she's kind of the poster girl. So she ends up having a brush with death, and it sparks suspicions. If Leah could be so careless with her sort of immortality, is she worthy of that immortality? This sounds really interesting. This is another one that I feel like I don't know anyone who has read and reviewed this, but I've heard so much about it, and I am very interested in this. I've been wanting to read this for a long time, actually, so I took the opportunity to get a discounted hardback. Next, I have a whole stack of books from the Harper Voyager stand and the Harper 360 stands. They were all kind of together, and I, no surprise, ended up just buying out the stand because I am a huge fan of the stuff that they publish. So just really quickly to go through them, we have All the Ever Afters. This is by Danielle Teller. This is the untold story of Cinderella's stepmother, and you know I love a good retelling, which, funny enough, I realize I haven't read very many of. I'm very much going to be fixing that soon. I've got Lifelike by J. Kristoff. I have never read a J. Kristoff book, but now I own 3, which is slightly ridiculous. It sort of feels like it has a Ready Player One vibe. It's about a girl named Eve who finds an android boy named Ezekiel on kind of a scrap heap where she tends to live and kind of hang out. So she becomes best friends with him after she fixes him up, and they go on great adventures together. Next up we have Hunted by Megan Spooner. I believe this is an older one. Actually not that old, maybe 2017. So this came out in 2017. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and rather than something that's very much inspired by the original tale, this is a straight up retelling of the fairy tale. Next up we have a book that I've been hearing so much about and I've been desperate to get my hands on a copy of. This is The Book of M, and this is by Peng Shepherd. So this says here, 2 years ago when the Forgetting finally reached the United States, Ori and Max saw its effects. They watched the shadowless man speaking perfect English walk straight into a fire, not remembering what it was. Heard children with no silhouettes ask flowers where the nearest water flowed, as if the flowers could understand. Why had it turned out to be that shadows were the parts of the bodies where memories were stored? Why did it happen to some but not to others? Why did some people forget things after 2 weeks and some hang on for much longer? And when they finally did forget, why did the earth itself seem to forget too? This sounds amazing. This sounds like such a cool kind of twist on the sort of strange dystopian novel, and it's absolutely beautiful. Like the title page here, obviously they've put a lot of sort of wonderful design work into this book, and I have been hearing wonderful things about it so far. I'm very much looking forward to this. I'm really hoping to read this one soon. Next up we have a feminist dystopian novel, and this is sort of in the vein of The Handmaid's Tale. So this is Vox. This is by Christina Dulcher. So this is a book about a kind of new government that comes into power and everything changes for the women in the country. I believe it's going to be the United States, but I'm not 100% sure. It doesn't say here. So almost overnight, bank accounts are frozen, passports are taken away, and 70 million women lose their jobs. Even more terrifyingly, young girls are no longer taught to read and write. For herself, for her daughter, and for every woman silenced, Jean will reclaim her voice. The last book that I picked up on the first day of Yalc on Friday. It's a wonder that I made it home at all, actually, because I have so much stuff, but this was Ash Princess. This is by Laura Sebastian. This is one that I've been wanting to read for a very, very long time. I've heard very good things about it, and I also know that it is a very, very dark book that's kind of a new take on the kind of lost princess rising to power myth. So on the Saturday of Yalc, I actually was so busy I only picked up 4 books. I ended up getting a lot of stuff signed, including 2 of these. So the first book that I picked up is by an author who I saw on a panel, and not only is she absolutely fabulous, she's a fashion historian, which means that she dresses so beautifully and so well. It's a historical fiction book that is set during the Holocaust. This is The Red Ribbon, and this is by Lucy Adlington. So this book follows a girl named Ella, and she is a prisoner at Auschwitz, and she's a dressmaker. So she's making dresses, I believe, for the Nazi officers' wives, and she ends up being able to use this as a method for survival. This is another one of those books that just has so little on the back, which I think is fantastic. This is one that is compared to The Tattooist of Auschwitz, which is a book that I have not read, but has been getting a lot of coverage lately and is supposed to be absolutely wonderful. I love historical fiction, and I don't read enough about this particular period in time because it's so upsetting, but I want to go ahead and make that effort to read more. Next we have After the Fire by Will Hill. This one, I believe it's the YA Book Prize for 2018, I believe. This is one that I've actually started, but I need to finish my current read before I really sink my teeth into this. But this is a sort of reimagining of the siege at Waco, which, if you don't know, the US government, I think it was in the 80s, sort of infiltrated the Branch Davidians' compound in Waco, Texas, and it was a horrible tragedy. It's a very complex and complicated situation because it was the right thing to go in, but a lot of people were killed, but also at the same time there's a lot of child marriage and all this horrible stuff was going on. It was a terrible thing all around. So Will Hill went ahead and took sort of inspiration from that horrible event and created this book, which is seen through the eyes of a 16-year-old girl who is a sort of person on this particular compound, and it takes place after the siege happens. The siege is kind of the opening pages of the book. Next up, I have The Song Rising in the Mime Order by Samantha Shannon. So these are the second and third books in the Bone Season trilogy. I'm actually not sure which is the second and which is the third, but I intended to bring the Bone Season with me and I ended up not doing that. But I wanted to get some stuff signed by her, so I ended up buying these two and they are now signed. I'm really looking forward to this series. A lot of people say mixed things about them, and I know that it is quite complex and quite complicated, but I am very, very curious because it sounds like something that I'm really going to enjoy. So Sunday is the day that I really went gung-ho and bought a ton of stuff. So these are the books that I got on Sunday, minus one, which is going to be a present for my sister, so I'm not going to show you guys because she watches these videos. So first of all is Chasing the Stars by Mallory Blackman. This was also recommended by my friend Jen because I wanted a young adult sci-fi book that I haven't read yet and haven't bought yet, because it turns out that I owned a lot of the stuff that was in the Waterstone stall. So this is about Olivia and Aiden. They're heading home to Earth following a virus that wiped out the rest of their crew and their family. So Nathan is on a ship heading in the opposite direction, but on the journey it's attacked and only a few people survive. Their lives unexpectedly collide. Nathan and Olivia are instantly attracted to each other and fall sort of head over heels in love, but not everyone is pleased. So there's rumors and deception and murder, and is it possible to live out a happily ever after? This looks great. I've not read anything by Mallory Blackman before, but I believe she's one of the sort of founding people of Yalc. She's one of the reasons that Yalc is a thing now. So I'm very excited to read this. I know that her most famous book is Noughts and Crosses, which I would also like to read, but I have not picked up yet. So next up I have Cuckoo Song by Frances Harding. This is another standalone by Frances Harding. I love her so much, even though I've only read one of her books, but now I own like 4 of them, so I have to go ahead and read more. This one sounds incredibly creepy, and it's probably going to be quite unsettling. So when Tris wakes up after an accident, she knows something is very wrong. She is insatiably hungry. She keeps waking up with leaves in her hair, and her sister seems terrified of her. And when it all gets too much, she starts to cry, and her tears are like cobwebs. Soon Tris discovers that what happened to her is more strange and terrible than she ever could have imagined, and that she is quite literally not herself. In a quest to find the truth, she must travel to the terrifying underbelly of the city and meet the twisted architect who has dark designs on her family before it is too late. This sounds great. This sounds like super Frances Harding. I love her kind of creepy sort of fantasy but not fantasy books, and this is going to be wonderful. Next up we have The Wren Hunts by Mary Watson. This is a book I actually almost bought ages ago, and I'm glad that I went ahead and got it at Yalc. So this is a book about a girl named Wren Silk, and she is sort of chased through the forest in a warped version of a childhood game every winter. So she ends up being sent as an intern to the Harkness Foundation, which is kind of enemy headquarters, and her family's survival rests on her finding a secret that means she stays hidden because no one knows her true identity. So this sounds like a really kind of weird mix between a modern book and a kind of like creepy fairy tale. So I'm very, very intrigued by this one. This is actually signed by the author. I didn't even realize. This is one that I heard really, really good things about when it initially came out, but I don't think I've read many reviews of it. So I'm interested in sort of forming my own opinion on this book. Next up I have Showstopper, and this is by Hallie Barker. So Showstopper, I believe, looks like it's kind of another one of these circus type books, which I do really, really enjoy, but they can be kind of hit or miss for me because I really liked The Night Circus when I read it, although it's been a really long time, and I was not a huge fan of Caraval, but I kind of liked those circusy elements. So this should be really interesting. It is about Ben, who's the teenage son of a powerful government minister, and he attends the opening night of this circus and falls under the spell of Hoshiko, who's a tightrope walker, and she's the kind of star attraction. As he steps beyond the dazzle and spectacle of the arena, he reveals horrors that are lurking within. So it sounds like this is kind of a dark fantasy that sort of steps between the boundaries of our world and a much darker world. This sounds really interesting. It sounds really good to me. I've heard great things about this book, and the sequel, which I believe is Showstopper, just came out recently as well. Next up, we clearly have a theme. This is The Sacred Lies of Minnow Bly, and this is by Stephanie Oakes. This is another cult book, kind of like After the Fire. So I had started After the Fire, and I spotted this on the sourcebook stand, and I decided to snap it up. So this is about a girl named Minnow, and for 12 years, she was living amongst a cult. It doesn't say which one. So now the prophet has been murdered, and their camp set aflame, which sounds very similar to Waco, and it's clear that she knows something about this, and is languishing in a juvenile detention center, and she has to kind of explain to the FBI what happened here. So this sounds really interesting. This is one that I've not heard about, but I am very interested in the kind of young adult take on cults. So this last book, the last book that I have to show you, is one that I believe they were giving out copies of last year, and I ended up not getting one, so I got the hardcover this year. So this is Beast Made of Night, and this is by Toji Onyebuchi. So this is a debut novel, and it takes place in the walled city of Kos, where purity is exalted, but cleansing wrongdoings comes at a cost. So there are corrupt mages that can magically kind of extract sins from people, and they take on the form of sin beasts, which are lethal creatures that spawn from feelings of guilt. So young sin eaters known as Aki are indentured to the mages to slay these beasts. So 17-year-old Taj is one of these Aki, but so one day he's to eat the sin of a member of the royal family, and he faces off with one of the most fearsome beasts that he's ever encountered, and he ends up sort of having his eyes opened to a great conspiracy, and now he has to save his homeland and his own life. So this book sounds like it's going to be really, really great. I think it's oh god, I might be completely wrong, but I think it's an African-inspired fantasy, which I am very interested in reading more of, and it's got a beautiful cover. It's a debut novel. I think that this is going to be a really, really interesting book. It sounds like it's so different from a lot of the other stuff that I've picked up and that I've read recently. So that is it for my books that I got at Yalc. So I'm going to do a written blog post about my experiences at Yalc, so you can definitely check that out. I will link it below when it goes up. And if you are in the UK and you have the chance to go to Yalc, you absolutely should, because it's just fun. It's just a really, really good time. There's so many people celebrating books. There are so many authors. You can go and chat, and you can get to know some people who maybe you have talked to online but haven't spoken to in real life, which is the case for me. I met so many wonderful people, and I got to make new friends, which was really great. Also, Jason Momoa kept wandering through, which was really funny because the green room for London Film and Comic Con is up there. So like you got to see everyone, including myself and Scottish fiance, freak out that he was walking around. He has Beyonce hair. It's amazing. So if you went to Yalc, if you ended up getting any of these books, if you've read these books, if you have any places to recommend maybe I start, please let me know. I would really, really love to hear from you. I post bookish content to this channel fairly frequently, so definitely hit subscribe, check back, and I will see you next time.